Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. We are bright and early here in the morning, so thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're with us, it's about 6:34, so this is probably the earliest that we've had the Must Read Alaska Show, which we're pretty excited about. The reason we're doing this very early is because we have a double header today. I have a very special guest today, one of my favorite representatives. Representative Ben Carpenter. But before we get into that, I do want to say a couple things on the front end. First, I want to thank Charlie Pierce for Governor for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska Show. They have stepped in and been the main sponsor of kind of our new show format, and we are very grateful for them because they help spread conservative news all around Alaska by being the sponsor of the show. So thank you so much, Charlie Pierce for Governor, for sponsoring this show. And thank you everybody for tuning in over the last 2 years that we've done this show. We're very fortunate to have a pretty large listening base all over the US. And so whether you live in Alaska or live in Florida and you're tuning in, we want to thank you for tuning in. It does mean a lot to us. We do this for folks like you that listen in. So thanks so much. But today, we do have Representative Ben Carpenter, who represents Nikiski and some other parts of Alaska. And, I get the very awesome opportunity to have him as my representative. And he has done a phenomenal job down there in Juneau. He's somebody who's kind of held the line for conservatives and not went to Juneau and done opposite of what he said he was going to do when he ran. So we are very grateful for him that he ran on a simple platform of being a conservative, and that's what he's done down in Juneau. It's no frills. We know we got to get out of Ben Carpenter. He does exactly what he said he was going to do, and his votes prove it. And so we're very grateful to have folks like you, Ben Carpenter. And thanks so much for coming on the show today. Ben, you're on our new segment that we do called 5 Questions. And then I changed a couple of the questions up just for you because we have a very unique situation that we're faced with possibly today down there in Juneau. So I want to give that heads up to folks that are listening that a couple of the questions that we switched up to will kind of illuminate what's happening in Juneau. So first off, thanks so much, Ben, for joining us. And do you want to tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you represent? Because, there's folks that are listening here that don't even live in Alaska, don't know who you are, and may not know what district you represent. So give a little intro, if you will.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind introduction. So I represent one of 3 districts that are on the Kenai Peninsula in South Central Alaska. There are 3 basically broken up north to south, and I represent the Northern District. And the communities that lie in that district are from the east side, Nikiski, where my residence is, then along the highway system, Sterling, Cooper Landing, Hope, Moose Pass, Seward are all the major areas that population centers, if you will, or census designated places in some cases that I represent. And I was first elected in 2018 to the office. So a couple of years of experience here.
Nice. That's all you need. We're grateful for your time that you've served here, and we hope that you stick around for a while longer. So the first question is this, let's just dive right into it, is what got you involved in politics in the first place? These stories are different for everybody, but I think they're very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think if we were looking back on history and kind of using chronologically, figuring out what made me tick. My earliest memories in school were of government classes. That's what I remember. I really loved history classes and government classes, and I volunteered to be the senior class president of my high school. We did a mock convention, and I was involved in that mock convention during school. I was applied and was accepted to go to Boys State in the state of Alaska when I was young. So it's always been on my interest level to participate in our local government.
That's awesome. What to dive a little deeper in that question, just because I think it's interesting to hear, what was it that made you put your name on the ballot?
Well, timing was one of them. Probably the main reason is Mike Chenault, who had been serving our community in this seat previous to me, had decided to step aside and pursue other things, and it opened up the race to others that wanted to participate. And I was retiring from the military at the exact same time, and it just seemed like a perfect opportunity. I felt led to do it, and the rest is history.
Here we are today. Well, the current landscape, at least my impression of the current landscape in the Alaska State House is what I would look at as if anybody's watched the show Dance Moms, that's how I picture the drama that's happening in the Alaska State House over the last several years. Sometimes they haven't even been able to organize for 3 months, 2 months in, and it's been a little bit of a cluster, and that's a very nice way to put it. So what's your take on it, Representative Carpenter, in terms of the political landscape in the Alaska State House? You're in the thick of it. Give us a little peek under the hood.
Yeah, so the politics in Alaska is not unlike what the politics in the House is. We're a fairly divided population within the House, or within the state, and that's no different in the House. We are, and frankly, in the Senate as a fairly divided, equally divided representation of political philosophies from the left to the right. And so that we see that it plays out in who gets to maintain power or obtain power at the beginning of the session, and that power struggle has gone on for two legislatures now and delayed our forming of a government. I guess, and I don't have a frame of reference for other legislatures. I've never served in another state's legislature, so I don't know what kind of drama goes on. I imagine, since we're all human and there's drama in every single legislature, right? I wonder if, when we consider sending people to the legislature, are we considering that it's going to hurt us in our own community when we send that person? And I mean that in sincerity. I say, if it's important to send your best and your brightest, then those folks are already doing something that is valuable, and their absence at the local level is going to be felt because they're not there anymore, and you've sent them to the legislature. So, in some respects, you can't expect varsity play out of junior varsity players. Sometimes you send somebody and they spend some time on junior varsity, and they learn and they grow and they step into the role and are able to perform at the varsity level. Some people don't. And I'm not meaning that in a dig way. They just are going to be junior varsity players. And so I think, when we're looking at elections, they have consequences. Let's make sure the people we're saying are capable of playing at a varsity level, of subjugating their personal selfish interest to the needs of the state. And I think that's important for people to keep in mind.
Well, and it's, even a deeper point to that is, it begs the question, where the heck, we don't need to go into this, but where the heck is the Alaska Republican Party? It's ridiculous. Like, the other team is planning out the next 70 years of domination, planning every nook and cranny of how they're going to beat their opponents and how they're going to change the voting landscape, with ranked choice voting. And, we're sitting here in our Republican convention arguing over stupid rules that nobody cares about. And it's just I would love to see the Republican Party move more towards practical strategy on a grassroots effort, as opposed to lofty rules that zero people care about. And
I was very surprised when I jumped into politics in 2018 here at the state level that really what's happening through the process is controlled largely by the local party people who participate, right? And I was surprised that that's a handful of people, maybe 24 at the outside most, yeah, in my community. And so if we want to see, and this isn't, I mean, it goes for the legislature, it goes for everything. If we don't participate in our processes, then those people who do are the ones that are calling the shots. They're the ones that are making it happen. So if we want to increase our effectiveness, then that means people with talent have to show up and participate. And whether it's local government or whether it's the political process, the party system, or just getting organized, it doesn't matter whether you call yourself a Republican or some other party. You can't do this alone. I can't do it alone. I have to have teammates down here that are like-minded and work together to get stuff done. And it just takes good talent to do that at all levels.
Yep. And, shout out to our two Republican women's groups on the peninsula. They're like rock stars, and they help out. And anyways, it's also interesting to see that, again, we don't have to go into details with this, but I do want to just show people that you don't have to run a campaign like everybody tells you to. And if you're interested in figuring out what do I mean about that, just go take a look at how Representative Carpenter ran his campaign the last 2 cycles and won. He didn't necessarily do the things that everybody else does, and was able to, sweep the rug with his victory. So nice work on that. So the next question is this. So there's rumors and propaganda out there, maybe not propaganda, but at least rumors that swirling around that there is going to be, or is currently, a new mask mandate in Juneau, which I just find hysterical because, we're 2 years into this thing. We're over it. People on the our kids don't have to wear masks to get to school in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Nobody's wearing a mask to any, nobody for the most part is wearing a mask to any sort of grocery store. There's never been mask mandates at large on the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And I just think it's hilarious that the controlling party for the state house in the state of Alaska, they are more concerned about these stupid mask mandates than they are about balancing a freaking budget. And that's so frustrating for folks like myself who look at this and just think they're just, focusing on such the wrong thing. So talk to us a little bit about this new mask mandate. There's a couple of you that kind of stood your ground. Why'd you stand your ground, and what's to come of this mask mandate?
Yeah, I decided when, we got an email before we came to the floor that said, hey, there's now basically an arbitrary decision that we're all going to have to wear masks on the floor. And I said, we can't set the example for the state that every time a flare up of COVID happens, that we go back to mask mandates and lockdowns and hunker down. And we have got to learn to live with this virus, and for as long as it's with us. And that means we don't stop doing what we need to do. And somebody needs to set the example. And that's where I'm at. I think that part of the issue is getting lost in the messaging here. With the majority party, the majority caucus having members out, and that they only have a very slim majority, that means that they really can't do what they need to do without coming to my caucus to get things done, and they don't want to do that. So it's a very convenient thing for them to point the finger, for the speaker to point the finger at me and say, oh, hey, you're not wearing a mask. I told you need to wear a mask, so I'm going to shut everything down. Well, if I was to put a mask on and go in and sit on the floor and do her business, we would be shut down anyway, because she's not going to allow the minority to call the shots with our numbers. We're going to gavel out after she gets done what she needs to get done. There is no way that she's going to allow us to run through amendments to the budget that the minority has offered without her caucus members there to prevent the passage of those amendments. And that's the larger picture of what's happening. We'll see this whole crisis of mask mandate go away when she's got 21 members on the floor. It'll just magically poof, go away, and we won't have to deal with the masks anymore. It's a smokescreen.
So for those folks that are listening, I got Representative Ben Carpenter here talking about the new mask mandates in Juneau. And what you just heard from Representative Ben Carpenter's mouth is basically we have dance moms happening at the Juneau level. And this has nothing to do with people, the Speaker of the House being concerned about folks getting COVID. All this has to do is the Speaker of the House doesn't have enough votes to pass the things that she wants to pass. And so instead of gaveling in and doing the business, because the minority that Representative Carpenter is in probably has all their folks there to vote, instead of gaveling in, she's thrown this mask mandate out because she doesn't have enough people there to pass the things she needs to pass. And so instead of looking at the majority and saying, why aren't you guys there to do your job, now she can look at these three folks in the minority and say, why aren't you wearing masks? So what's your game plan? How does this play out?
I would just correct the record just a little bit and say that there are people who have tested positive, representatives who've tested positive and are going through the process of getting healthy. And I'm not making light of that. I myself have had the infection, and it took me down for a little while. I got better, and now I'm back to doing my job. And I think that's the experience of most people within the state. And I'm not insensitive to the fact that people are suffering an illness right now. That's not the concern. I told the speaker that if we're really concerned about the health of folks, then what we ought to do is recognize that both elected members and their staffs are out right now. Then let's take a pause in the legislature for days, whatever it takes for healthy, and then come back. All it takes is us to agree to waive the rules. So we've got a rule that says we have to be in session on the floor every 3 days.
Yep.
Well, we could waive that rule and then stay out for 6 days, whatever it takes, so that we're all back here to do business. But we're not working together to make that happen. And that would be the more mature response rather than crafting some arbitrary rule. And it's not a mature way to run state government. So, every time we have a flare up of COVID, we're going to go through this process. It's nonsense.
So are you going to keep, you don't have to show all your cards if you don't want to, because it hasn't happened yet today, but do you plan on just staying the course and not wearing a mask, even if it comes down to her having to physically remove you from the chambers?
Yeah, I'm not going to wear a mask. I've made that intention clear, and I don't think that she's going to remove me from the chambers. I think that gets uncomfortable for everybody. It doesn't look good. And the reality is that we went through the prayer, we went through the pledge, and if we had just given it another 5 minutes, we would have passed the budget bill across and been done.
Yeah.
It is insane that she stopped the session exactly when she did, because it literally would have took us another 5 minutes and we would have been done.
And I like what you said to kind of clarify, because it's not like, I can only speak for myself. I don't, people get sick, right? I'm 39 years old. Since the day, I can remember back in elementary school, people would get sick. You would stay home a couple of days, you'd figure it out, you get better, you go back to school or you go back to work. And, if people want to wear a mask, go for it. If they want to wear 10 masks and pink leotards and, a wig and, play the tuba, I don't care. Doesn't really matter to me. You could do it, while singing Sweet Home Alabama. I don't care. It's the minute that they try to mandate these rules, arbitrary rules, to everybody else in their community, state, US, that I'm going to have lots of pushback because that's not, we live in America. We don't live in a communist regime. And so I appreciate you taking a stand, Ben.
Yeah, there's a real foundational level here that people are fearful of the consequences. They weren't fearful 2 weeks ago when they were participating in a group event. They thought that there wasn't any need to be fearful. Now, when the evidence presents itself and says, hey, the virus is still out there and people got sick, now we're fearful. So put your masks on. And I refuse to live in fear. If I get sick, I get sick.
Yeah.
If not, then I don't. And that's the freedom that I choose to live with. And I resent the fact that somebody would say, oh man, we got reasons and I can list them off 1, 2, 3. These are reasons why everybody needs to put their mask on. Well, that's your reasoning. It's not my reasoning. And I choose to live my life the way I want to live my life. I resent the fact that you would force me to live my life the way you think I should live my life.
Yeah. Anytime somebody starts talking about the greater good, I'd get a little weary. That's how all the communist regimes started. We're going to do this for the greater good. And so anyways, keep just so you have supporters. You obviously know I'm a strong supporter in what you're doing, and you have lots of folks on our channel, Must Read Alaska, that agree with what you and the other two are doing, Eastman and Kirka. And so I know it's probably going to be a tough day, but you served in the military for 20 years. Some of this is probably child's play compared to the stuff you had to go through. So the next question is this, Representative Ben Carpenter. Thanks for giving us a little peek there. But who do you look up to in the political world, and why? I think this is an important question for folks that serve.
The face and the image that comes to mind immediately is Ronald Reagan. My earliest memories as a child are hearing Ronald Reagan's speeches and people talking about him. I not only as an adult as looking back on his policies and really associating with his political philosophies, but he was a really good communicator. And I think that's what people remember him most for, is his ability to communicate. And I find that as essential. It's really, really important. I'm still learning how to do that, but he's one person that I really look to as, from a historical perspective, and an example of what a statesman would be in my own lifetime to emulate. I really, that's who I think about first.
Man, he was definitely inspiring. I look at some of the speeches he did, and he had the ability to woo a crowd like there is, it's often not seen these days, which is very unfortunate. So the last question is this, Representative Carpenter. It's really gives you a kind of an open table here to talk about anything you'd like to talk about. Is there anything else that people need to know about, any bills that you're spearheading or things that you're excited about that are kind of down and that are in the pipeline? Fill us in on anything that's happening in the Representative Ben Carpenter world and stuff we should know about.
Yeah, so the majority of the focus in the legislature right now is centered around budget and spending money, and largely it's not the operating budget. I mean, I know that that's the budget before us, and we've gone through a process to get one in front of us, but the larger thing that is on everybody's mind, or at least most people's mind, I think, is the capital budget that's coming through. We've got a lot of federal dollars coming in, and then there are organizations outside of the legislature that have a bunch of federal money for broadband infrastructure and sewer and water type projects, and we're talking billions of dollars. And I think that's really kind of the next hurdle, or the next thing that people are focused on. I know that there are personal legislation and personal bills. A lot of those are moving past, but they're all mostly Democrat majority sponsored bills. And that's what you would expect with them being in the majority. We do have some hope that election security, election integrity legislation will pass this legislature with bipartisan support. I have reached out had a couple town halls to kind of discuss where we're at with that. And we will be in Seward on the 15th of this next month of April to give an update. And then the next thing that are on people's minds that I've been kind of focused on helping people understand is what's going to happen with the next election, this ranked choice voting and open primaries. So I've done a couple presentations and answered questions. Just be there for the people of the Kenai to educate themselves on what the process is going to look like here this year. It's going to look significantly different than what we did before. So if people have got questions, they can always reach out to me by email. That email address is rep.ben.carpenter@akleg.gov. And another way to contact me is go to my website. We created this at the beginning of the year. It's bencarpenterpost.com. There's actually a link there in the lower right-hand corner during the business hours. You can chat directly with my staff if you've got questions in real time that are happening. If you're watching gavel to gavel and watching the floor session or watching a committee meeting, you can get on that website and just ask a real-time question to my staff, and they'll do their best to answer your question. So phone number from anywhere in the state of Alaska is an 800-469-3779. And that gets to either the legislature or the Juneau office or the Kenai office, depending on where we're at. You don't have to know whether it's interim during, anyway, it's just one number you have to remember, and it comes directly to the office wherever we're at the time. So that's 800-469-3779. So that's where we're at. Focused on getting the budget passed, having a conversation about capital spending. It's frustrating to me because we get focused on this dividend question every single year. If we would just follow the statute, we would have a solution and move forward. And the consequences of that would then lead us to another conversation of what's necessary for state government. And really and honestly, I really feel that being a conversation that's talking about $2,500 paychecks, not $2,500 dividends. We've got a non-oil economy in our state that needs to expand. We need to diversify. And what can the legislature do to set the stage for that? Low-cost energy is a must. So what are we going to do to make that happen? And that empowers people at all levels, especially those who rely on permanent fund dividends. If you've got a better economy, then you have better jobs and you have better income. And that's what we really need, rather than having a fight every year about one $2,500 check or one $3,500 check or one $4,000 check. I'd rather talk about how do you get a $4,000 paycheck, right? That's what we need. So
That's
some
awesome.
of the conversations I wish we were happening instead of fighting over masks.
Yeah. And for those folks that are just joining in, we are about to tune out, but we got Representative Ben Carpenter here, and he is going to, he has yesterday and will continue today to make a stand for our freedoms. He is not going to be wearing a mask inside of the House chambers, which I think is amazing. I think he's standing up for the, majority of folks in Alaska, I would say, definitely the majority of folks in Alaska that don't like health mandates crammed down their throat, especially when they don't make any sense and they have no reason or logic to them. And so we want to thank Representative Carpenter for making that stand for us. He's going to probably go through a little bit of hell today, but I'm sure he's willing to do it. And if you've listened in today at all, some of you might wonder, well, why doesn't the minority do stuff? Why don't they get bills passed? Well, it's literally impossible to have the minority. Their bills won't even come out of committee. And elections do have consequences. This goes back to one of the first things that Representative Carpenter said. We have a couple of Republicans that ran as Republicans that now caucus with the Democrats, and they handed the power over to the Democrats. And so conservative ideas don't have a shot, don't have a chance because of this happening. And the conservative bills will never see the light of day. So elections do have consequences for the folks that are listening that have those Republicans that now are caucusing with the Democrats. Take a look at who you're going to get elected this next cycle, because it is important. It does matter. And so we want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is the Must Read Alaska show. And we want to thank our sponsor, Charlie Pierce for Governor. Because of Charlie Pierce for Governor, we're able to spread conservative news through all the nooks and crannies in Alaska. And we want to thank our listeners for helping us become the #2 ranked government podcast in the entire US on Podbean, which is pretty awesome. We just look at that and we're like, how the heck does that happen? And we also we're in the top, not 1%, but 0.05% of all podcasts of all categories in the entire US, according to listennotes.com, which is basically the Billboard chart of podcasts. And so we every day, because of folks like you listening in, we beat out major podcasts that are got the BBC, NBC, ABC, all the 3-syllable acronyms behind it, pumping millions of dollars into it. And little old Alaska here has beaten them from the living room of my or from my son's bedroom here I'm in today. So thanks everybody for listening. We're going to have a show. I'm going to have another show here in an hour. So tune in here in about another hour. I'm going to have one more show today, and then we're going to have a show on Friday. I think James Baisden will be on Friday. Possibly not, but we'll still have a show on Friday. So thanks everybody again. And thank you so much, Representative Ben Carpenter. Keep kicking butt and stay the course. We believe in you, and we appreciate you standing up for freedoms for everybody in Alaska. Thanks. Until next
John.
time.
Have a good day.